Is BC Theater's performance of War of the Worlds. I forgot to say this for the last show. If you didn't already know, 82 years to the day, this actually was on the radio in 1938. 82 years to the day. And if you know nothing about War of the Worlds, don't look it up now, but look it up afterwards. It did scare the you-know-what out of the entire nation, because they thought it was real. So I am Mr. Pronley, if you didn't already know that. I'm very excited to be the director and producer of this performance, and normally, if you didn't already know, we would be in the black box. But because of COVID right now, we can't do that. So I am very happy to announce the next production that we're going to do is another radio play. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. Tryouts for that are Wednesday and Thursday of next week. And we will be in the black box for that performance right before Christmas. So in this wonderful world that we're currently living in, one of the things I've tried very, very hard to instill in these young adults that are up here on stage, and by the way, because we're live streaming this, there's actually more people in the technical crew than there are people on stage. But that's the world that we live in. So one of the things I've tried very hard to instill in these young adults is my two favorite words for this year: adapt and thrive. And that's what we do. If you didn't already know, we had a wonderful summer performance viewed on YouTube over 600 times, 2 casts in that one. And in this particular situation, we also did 2 casts because of the possibility, God forbid, that somebody in one of the cast had to be quarantined. The other cast member playing the same role could step up. And unfortunately, we've also had to have that happen for the performances. So I give these kids a lot of credit because they're living by adapt and thrive. Whatever obstacle is in their way, we figure out a way to get over that. And I think that's very, very important, especially for those young kids that really, really want to do theater. And I actually don't think there's many theaters open right now. So yay for us, because we're doing something. And thank you all for being here. There's 2 things I want to mention, and then I will turn it back over. But number 1 is on a table outside to the right-hand side, Applause, which is our nonprofit group that supports all the fine arts here at Central. Because of the current situation, they're very low on membership. If you are a BC family and you haven't already signed up for Applause, I very much encourage you to do that. Applause actually, the lights, not the ones that are on me right now, but the ones that are on the truss over here are actually a benefit of the theater program from Applause. So consider it if you haven't already done so. That was number 1. Number 2 is, for all those that are online, and right now there's over 65 people throughout the United States watching me right now and this performance, we thank you for joining in. So even though you couldn't be here in person, we certainly hope you enjoy it as well. So ladies and gentlemen, sit back and relax and enjoy if you can. Oh, actually, you have something. Oh, all right. Kaylin's going to say something.
Hello everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. As you know, this year presents lots of challenges for everyone, especially those in the performing arts. Multiple cast members of the War of the Worlds have been affected by COVID-19 in some way, making them unable to perform tonight. However, the show must go on. We would like to dedicate tonight's performance to our fellow quarantine cast members, as well as those who have stepped up to fill their shoes. You are strong, resilient, and loved. We thank you all for your never-ending support of the performing arts at BC through these challenging times. Please enjoy the War of the Worlds.
the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations present Orson Welles and the Mercury Theater on air in The War of Worlds by H.G. Wells.
Ladies and gentlemen, the director of the Mercury Theater and star of these broadcasts, Orson Welles.
We know now that in the early years of the 20th century, this world was being watched by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. We know now that as human beings busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. With infinite complaisance, people went to and fro over the earth, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small spinning fragment of solar driftwood which, by chance or design, man inherited from the dark mystery of time and space. Yet across an immense ethereal gulf, minds that are to our minds as ours are to the beasts in the jungle, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us. In the 39th year of the 20th century came the Great Disillusionment. Business was better. The war scare was over. More men were back at work. Sales were picking up. On this particular evening, October 30th, the Crossley service estimated that roughly 32 million people were listening in on radios.
For the next 24 hours, not much change in temperature. A slight atmospheric disturbance of undetermined origin is reported over Nova Scotia, causing a low-pressure area to move down rather rapidly over the northeastern states, bringing a forecast of rain accompanied by winds of light gale force. Maximum temperature, 66. Minimum, 48. This weather report comes to you from the Government Weather Bureau. We take you now to the Meridian Room at the Hotel Park Plaza in New York City, where you'll be entertained by the music of Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. From the Meridian Room in the Park Plaza Hotel in New York City, we bring you the music of Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra. With a touch of the Spanish, Ramon Raqueo leads off with La Comparsita.
Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt our broadcast of dance music to bring you a special bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. At 20 minutes before 8 Central Time, Professor Farrell of Mount Jennings Observatory, Chicago, Illinois, reported observing several explosions of incandescent gas occurring at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The spectroscope indicates this gas to be hydrogen and moving towards Earth with enormous velocity. Professor Pearson of Princeton Observatory confirms Farrell's observation and describes the phenomenon as, quote, like a jet of blue flame shot from a gun, unquote. We return you now to the music of Ramon Raqueo, playing for you in the Meridian Room of the Park Plaza Hotel, situated in downtown New York.
And now a tune that never loses favor, the ever-popular Stardust, Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra.
Ladies and gentlemen, following on the news given in our bulletin a moment ago, the Government Meteorological Bureau has requested that the large observatories of the country keep an astronomical watch on any further disturbances occurring on the planet Mars. Due to the unusual nature of this occurrence, we have arranged an interview with a noted astronomer, Professor Pearson, who will give us his views on this event. In a few moments, we will take you to the Princeton Observatory in Princeton, New Jersey. We return you, until then, to the music of Ramon Raqueo and his orchestra. We are ready now to take you to the Princeton Observatory, where Carla Phillips, our commentator, will interview Professor Richard Pearson, famous astronomer. We take you now to Princeton, New Jersey.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Carla Phillips speaking to you from the Observatory of Princeton. I'm standing in a large semicircular room, pitch black except for an oblong split in the ceiling. Through this opening, I can see a sprinkling of stars that cast a kind of frosty glow over the intricate mechanisms of the huge telescope. The ticking sound you hear is the vibration of the clockwork. Professor Pearson stands directly beside me on a small platform, peering through the giant lens. I ask you to be patient, ladies and gentlemen, during any delay that may arise during our interview. Besides his ceaseless watch of the heavens, Professor Pearson may be interrupted by telephone or other communications. During this period, he is in constant touch with the astronomical centers of the world. Professor, may I begin our questions?
At any time, Mrs. Phillips.
Professor, would you please tell our radio audience exactly what you see as you observe the planet Mars through your telescope?
Nothing unusual at the moment, Mrs. Phillips. A red disk swimming in a blue sea. Transverse stripes across the disk. Quite distinct now because Mars happens to be the point nearest the Earth, in opposition as we call it.
In your opinion, what do these transverse stripes signify, Professor?
Not canals, I can assure you, Mrs. Phillips.
I see.
Although, that is the popular conjecture of those who imagine Mars to be inhabited. From a scientific viewpoint, the stripes are merely the result of atmospheric conditions particular to the planet.
Then you're quite convinced as a scientist that living intelligence, as we know it, does not exist on Mars?
I'd say the chances are 1,000 to 1.
And yet, how do you account for these gas eruptions occurring on the surface of the planet at regular intervals?
Mrs. Phillips, I cannot account for it.
By the way, Professor, for the benefit of our listeners, how far is Mars from Earth?
Approximately 40 million miles.
Well, that seems a safe enough distance.
Thank you.
Just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Someone has just passed Professor Pearson a message. While he reads it, let me remind you that we are speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with famous astronomer Professor Pearson. Oh, just a moment, ladies and gentlemen. Professor Pearson has just passed me a message which he has just received. Professor, may I read it to the listening audience?
Certainly, Mrs. Phillips.
Ladies and gentlemen, I shall read you a wire addressed to Professor Pearson from Dr. Gray of the National History Museum, New York. Quote, 9:15 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Seismograph registered shock of almost earthquake intensity occurring within a radius of 20 miles of Princeton. Please investigate. Signed, Lloyd Gray, Chief of Astronomical Division. Unquote. Professor, could this occurrence possibly have something to do with the disturbances observed on the planet Mars?
Hardly, Mrs. Phillips. This is probably a meteorite of unusual size, and its arrival at this particular time is merely a coincidence. However, I shall conduct the search as soon as daylight permits.
Thank you, Professor. Ladies and gentlemen, for the past 10 minutes we've been speaking to you from the observatory at Princeton, bringing you a special interview with Professor Pearson, noted astronomer. This is Carla Phillips speaking. We are returning you now to our New York studio.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News. Toronto, Canada. Professor Morse of Macmillan University reports observing a total of 3 explosions on the planet Mars between the hours of 7:45 p.m. and 9:20 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This confirms earlier reports received from American observatories. Now, near home comes a special bulletin from Trenton, New Jersey. It is reported that at 8:50 p.m. a huge flaming object, believed to be a meteorite, fell on a farm in the neighborhood of Grover's Mill, New Jersey, just 22 miles from Trenton. The flash in the sky was seen within a radius of several hundred miles, and the noise of the impact was heard as far north as Elizabeth, New Jersey. We have dispatched a special mobile unit to the scene and will have our commentator, Carla Phillips, give you a word picture as soon as she arrives there from Princeton. In the meantime, we take you to the Hotel Martinet in Brooklyn, where Bobby Millette and his orchestra are offering a program of dance music. We take you now to Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Carla Phillips again out of the Wilmuth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Professor Pearson and myself made the 11 miles from Princeton in 10 minutes. Well, I hardly know where to begin to paint for you a word picture of the strange scene before my eyes, like something out of a modern Arabian Nights. Well, I did just get here. Well, I just got here. I can't quite see where the object is. Oh yes, I believe that's it, half buried in a vast pit. What I can see of the object itself doesn't look very much like a meteor, at least not the meteors I've seen. It looks more like a huge cylinder. It has a diameter of, what would you say, Professor?
What's that?
What would you say, what is the diameter of this?
About 30 yards.
About 30 yards. The metal on the sheath is, well, I've never seen anything like it. The color is sort of yellowish white. Curious spectators now are pressing close to the object in spite of the efforts of the police to keep them back. They're getting in front of my line of vision. Would you mind standing to one side, please? One side there, one side. Well, the police are pushing the crowd back. Here's Mr. Wilmuth, owner of the farm here. He may have some interesting facts to add. Mr. Wilmuth, would you please tell our radio audience as much as you remember of this rather unusual visitor that dropped in your backyard? Step closer, please. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Mr. Wilmuth.
Well, I was listening to the radio.
Closer and louder, please.
Pardon me?
Louder, please, and closer.
Yes'm. Well, I was listening to the radio, kind of drowsing. That professor fellow was talking about Mars, so I was half dozing and...
Yes, Mr. Wilmuth. And then what happened?
Well, as I was saying, I was listening to the radio kind of halfways.
Yes, Mr. Wilmuth. And then you saw something?
Well, now first off, I heard something.
And what did you hear?
A hissing sound, kind of like this. It's like a 4th of July rocket.
Yes, then what?
Well, I turned my head out the window and I could have swore I was to sleep and dreaming.
Yes?
I seen that kind of greenish streak and then, zingo, something smacked the ground, knocked me clear out of my chair.
Well, were you frightened, Mr. Wilmuth?
Well, I don't quite know. I reckon I was riled.
Thank you, Mr. Wilmuth. Thank you very much.
Would you like me to tell you some more?
No, that's quite all right. That's plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, you've just heard Mr. Wilmuth, owner of the farm where this thing has fallen. I wish I could convey the atmosphere, the background of this fantastic scene. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. Professor, would you please tell our radio audience as much as you remember of this event?
Possibly the unequal cooling of its surface.
I see. Do you still think it's a meteor, Professor?
I don't know what to think. The metal casing is definitely extraterrestrial, not found on this Earth. Friction with the Earth's atmosphere usually tears holes in the meteorite. This thing is smooth and, as you can see, is in the shape of a cylinder.
Just a minute. Something's happening. I can make out Just a minute, something's happening. The top's come loose. Something's rising out of it, and the thing must be hollow. Something's crawling out of the hollow top. Someone or something. I can see peering out of that 2 black discs. Are they eyes? It might be a face. It might be... Good heavens! Something's wriggling out of the shadows like a gray snake. Now it's another one. And another one. And another one! They look like tentacles to me. I can see the thing's body now. It's large. Large as a bear, and it glistens like wet leather. But that face, ladies and gentlemen, it's indescribable. I can hardly force myself to keep looking at it, so awful. The eyes are black and gleam like a serpent. The mouth is V-shaped with saliva dripping from its rimless lips that seem to quiver and pulsate. The monster, or whatever it is, can hardly move. It seems weighed down by possibly gravity or something. The thing's rising up now, and the crowd falls back. They've seen plenty. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most extraordinary experience. I can't find words. I'll move the microphone with me as I talk. I'll have to stop the description until I can take a new position. Hold on, will you please? I'll be right back in a minute.
We are bringing you an eyewitness account of what's happening at Wilmouth Farm, Grover's Mill, New Jersey. And now, back to Carla Phillips at Grover's Mill.
Ladies and am I on? Ladies and gentlemen, here I am again, back of a stone wall that adjoins Mr. Wilmouth's garden. From here, I get a sweep of the whole scene. I'll give you every detail as long as I can talk and as long as I can see. More state police have arrived. They're drawing up a cordon in front of the pit, about 30 of them. No need to push the crowd back now. They're willing to keep their distance. The professor is conferring with someone. We can't quite see who. Oh yes, I believe it's Professor Pearson. Yes, it is. Now they've parted, and the professor moves around one side studying the object, while the captain and 2 policemen advance with something in their hands. It's a white handkerchief tied to a pole, a flag of truce. If the creature knows what that means, what anything means. Just a minute, something's happening. A humped shape rises out of the pit. I can make out a small beam of light against a mirror. What's that? There's a jet of flame springing from that mirror, and it leaps right at the advancing men. It strikes them head on. Good Lord, they're turning into flame! Now the whole field's caught fire. The woods, the barns, the gas tanks of automobiles. It's spreading everywhere. It's coming this way, about 20 yards to my right.
Ladies and gentlemen, due to circumstances beyond our control, we are unable to continue with the scheduled broadcast from Grover's Mill. Evidently, there's some difficulty with our field transmission. However, we will return you to that point at the earliest opportunity. In the meantime, we have a late bulletin from San Diego, California. Professor Indelkoffer, speaking at a dinner of the California Astronomical Society, expressed the opinion that the explosions on Mars are undoubtedly nothing more than severe volcanic disruptions on the surface of the planet. We continue now with our piano interlude.
gentlemen, I have just been handed a message that came in from Grover's Mill by telephone. Just one moment, please. At least 40 people, including 6 state troopers, lie dead in a field east of the village of Grover's Mill, their bodies burned and distorted beyond all possible recognition. The next voice you will hear will be that of Brigadier General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton, New Jersey.
I have been requested by the governor of New Jersey to place the counties of Mercer and Middlesex as far west as Princeton and east to Jamesburg under martial law. No one will be permitted to enter these areas unless with a pass issued by state or military authority. 4 troops of state militia are proceeding from Trenton to Grover's Mill and will aid in the evacuation of homes within the range of military operations. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you have just been listening to General Montgomery Smith, commander of the state militia at Trenton. In the meantime, further details on the catastrophe at Grover's Mill have been coming in. The strange creatures, after unleashing their deadly assault, crawled back into their pit and made no attempt to prevent the efforts of firemen to recover the bodies and extinguish the flames. The combined fire departments of Mercer County are working tirelessly to extinguish these flames, which menace the entire countryside. We have been unable to establish any communication with our mobile unit at Grover's Mill, but we hope to return you there at the earliest possible moment. In the meantime, we take you to, yes? Just one moment, please. Okay, I have been informed that we have finally established communication with an eyewitness of the catastrophe at Grover's Mill. Professor Pearson has been located at a farmhouse near Grover's Mill, where he has established an emergency observation post. As a scientist, he will give you his full explanation of the calamity. The next voice you will hear will be that of Professor Pearson's, brought to you by Direct Wire. Professor Pearson.
Of the creatures in the rocket cylinder at Grover's Mill, I can give no authoritative information, either to their nature, their origin, or their purpose here on Earth. Of their destructive instrument, I might venture some conjectural explanation. For want of a better term, I shall refer to this mysterious weapon as a heat ray. It's all too evident that these creatures have scientific knowledge far in advance of our own. It's my guess that in some way they are able to generate an intense heat in a chamber of practically absolute no conductivity. This intense heat that they project in a parallel beam against any object they choose, by means of a parabolic beam of unknown composition, much as a mirror of a lighthouse projects a beam of light. This is my conjecture of the origin of the heat ray.
Thank you, Professor Pearson. Ladies and gentlemen, here is a bulletin from Trenton. It is a brief statement informing us that the charred body of Carla Phillips has been identified in a Trenton hospital. Now, here is a bulletin from Washington, D.C. The Office of the Director of the National Red Cross reports that 10 units of Red Cross emergency workers have been assigned to the state headquarters of the militia stationed near Grover's Mill, New Jersey. Here is a bulletin from the State Police, Princeton Junction. The fires at Grover's Mill and vicinity are now under control. Scouts report all quiet in the pit, and there is no sign of life appearing from the mouth of the cylinder. Here is a special statement from Mr. Harry McDonald, Vice President in charge of operations.
We have received a request from the state militia at Trenton to place in their disposal our entire broadcasting facilities. In view of the gravity of the situation, and believing that radio has a responsibility to serve in the public interest at all times, we will be turning over our entire broadcasting facilities to the state militia at Trenton.
We take you now to the field headquarters of the state militia, stationed near Grover's Mill, New Jersey.
This is Captain Lansing of the Signal Corps, attached to the state militia, now engaged in military operations in the vicinity of Grover's Mill. Situation arising from the reported presence of certain individuals of unidentified nature is now under complete control. The cylindrical object, which lies in a pit directly below our position, is surrounded on all sides by 8 battalions of infantry. Without heavy field pieces, but adequately armed with rifles and machine guns, all cause for alarm, if such cause ever existed, is now entirely unjustified. The things, whatever they are, don't even venture to poke their heads above the pit. I can see their hiding place plainly in the glare of the searchlights here. With all their reported resources, these creatures scarcely stand up against heavy machine gun fire. Anyway, it's an interesting outing for the troops. I can make out their khaki uniforms crossing back and forth in front of the lights. It almost looks like a real war. There appears to be some slight smoke boring the Millstone River, probably fires started by campers. Well, we ought to see some action soon. One of the companies is deploying on the left flank. A quick thrust and it'll all be over. Now, wait a minute. I see something moving. No, it's nothing but a shadow. Now the troops are on the edge of the Wilmeth farm. 7,000 armed men are closing in on an old metal tube. A tub, rather. Wait, that wasn't a shadow. It's something moving. Solid metal, kind of a shield-like affair rising up out of the cylinder. It's going higher and higher. Why, it's standing on legs, actually rearing up on a sort of metal framework. Now it's reaching above the trees and the searchlights are on it. Hold on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a grave announcement to make. Incredible as it may seem, both the observations of science and the evidence of our own eyes leads to the inescapable assumption that those strange beings that landed in the Jersey farmlands tonight are the vanguard of an invading army from the planet Mars. The battle that took place tonight at Grover's Mill has ended in one of the most startling defeats ever suffered by an army in modern times. 7,000 men armed with rifles and machine guns pitted against a single fighting machine from the invaders from Mars. 120 known survivors. The rest strewn across the battle area from Plainsboro to Grover's Mill, crushed and trampled to death under the metal feet of the monster, or burned to cinders by its heat ray. The monster is now in control of the middle section of New Jersey and has effectively cut the state in half. Communication lines are down from Pennsylvania to the Atlantic Ocean. Railroad tracks are torn, and service from New York to Philadelphia discontinued, except for routing a few of the trains through Allentown and Phoenixville. Highways to the north, south, and west are clogged with frantic human traffic. Police and Army reserves are unable to control the mad flight. By morning, the fugitives will have sold Camden, Trenton, and Philadelphia. It is estimated to twice their normal population. Martial law prevails throughout New Jersey and eastern Pennsylvania. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we take you to Washington for a special broadcast on the national emergency. The Secretary of the Interior.
Citizens of the nation, I shall not try to conceal the gravity of the situation that confronts the country, nor the concern of your government in protecting the lives and property of its people. However, I wish to impress upon you, private citizens and public officials, all of you, the urgent need of calm and resourceful action. Fortunately, this formidable enemy is still confined to a comparatively small area, and we may place our faith in the military forces to keep them there. In the meantime, placing our faith in God, we must continue our duties, each and every one of us, so that we may confront this destructive adversary with a nation united, courageous, and consecrated to the preservation of human supremacy on this earth. I thank you.
You've just heard the Secretary of the Interior speaking from Washington. Bulletins too numerous to read are piling up in the studio here. We are informed that the central portion of New Jersey is blacked out from radio communication due to the effect of the heat ray upon power lines and electrical equipment. Here's a special bulletin from New York. Cables have been received from English, French, and German scientific bodies offering assistance. Astronomers report continued gas outbursts at regular intervals on the planet Mars. The majority voiced the opinion that the enemy will be reinforced by additional rocket machines. There have been several attempts made to locate Professor Pearson of Princeton, who's observed the Martians at close range. It is feared he was lost in the recent battle. Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report 3 Martian machines visible above treetops, moving north toward Somerville with population fleeing ahead of them. The heat ray is not in use. Although advancing at express train speed, the invaders pick their way carefully. They seem to be making a conscious effort to avoid destruction of cities and countryside. However, they stop to uproot power lines, bridges, and railroad tracks. Their apparent objective is to crush resistance, paralyze communication, and disorganize human society. Here's a bulletin from Basking Ridge, New Jersey. Coon hunters have stumbled upon a second cylinder similar to the first, embedded in the Great Swamp 20 miles south of Morristown. Army field pieces are proceeding from Newark to blow up the second invading unit before the cylinder can be opened and the fighting machine rigged. They are taking up a position in the foothills of the Watchung Mountains. Another bulletin from Langham Field, Virginia. Scouting planes report enemy machines, now 3 in number, increasing speed northward, kicking over houses and trees in their evident haste to form a conjunction with their allies south of Morristown. Machines also sighted by telephone operator east of Middlesex within 10 miles of Plainfield. Here's a bulletin from Winston Field, Long Island. A fleet of Army bombers carrying heavy explosives flying north in pursuit of enemy. Scouting planes act as guides. They keep the speeding enemy in sight. Just one moment, please, ladies and gentlemen. We've run special wires to the artillery line in adjacent villages to give you direct reports in the zone of the advancing enemy. We take you now to the battery of the 22nd Field Artillery, located in the Watchung Mountains.
Range? 32 meters.
32 meters.
Projection? 39 degrees.
39 degrees.
Fire!
"140 yards to the right, sir."
Shift range? 31 meters.
31 meters.
Projection? 27 degrees.
27 degrees.
Fire!
"A hit, sir. We got the tripod of one of them. They stopped. The others are trying to repair it."
Quick, get the range. Shift 30 meters.
30 meters.
Projection? 25 degrees.
25 degrees.
Fire!
"Can't see the shell ants, sir. They're letting off a smoke."
What is it?
"A black smoke, sir. Moving this way, lying close to the ground. It's moving fast."
Put on gas masks. Shift to 24 meters.
24 meters.
Projection? 24 degrees.
24 degrees.
Fire!
"Still can't see, sir. The smoke's coming nearer."
Get the range.
23 meters.
23 meters.
23 meters.
Projection, 22 degrees.
22 degrees.
22 degrees.
This is Army bombing plane V-843 off Bayonne, New Jersey. Lieutenant Vogt, commanding 8 bombers, reporting to Commander Farfax, Langham Field. This is Vogt, reporting to Commander Farfax, Langham Field. Enemy tripod machines are now in sight, reinforced by 3 machines from the Morristown cylinder. 6 altogether. 1 machine is partially crippled, believed hit by a shell from Army guns in Watchung Mountains. The guns now appear silent. There's a heavy black fog lying close to the earth, of extreme density. Nature, unknown. No sign of heat ray. Enemy now turns east, crossing Passac River and heading into the Jersey marshes. Evident objective is New York City. I see one straddle the Pulaski Skyway. They're pushing down a high-station power attack. The machines are close to getting together now, and we're ready to strike. Planes circling, ready to attack. 1,000 yards and we'll be over the first. 800, 600, 400, 200. There they go, the giant arm raised. Green flash. They're spraying us with flames. 2,000 feet. No chance to release bombs. Only one thing left. Drop on them. Plane and all. We're diving on the first one. Now the engine's gone. 8!
Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. This is Bayonne, New Jersey, calling Langham Field. Come in, please.
This is Langham Field. Go ahead.
8 Army bombers in engagement with enemy tripod machines over Jersey Flats. Engines incapacitated by heat ray. All crashed. One enemy machine destroyed. Enemy now discharging heavy black smoke in the direction of...
This is Newark, New Jersey. This is Newark, New Jersey. Warning, poisonous black smoke pouring in from Jersey marshes. Reaches South Street. Urge population to move into open areas. Automobiles use Route 7, 23, 24. Avoid congested areas. Smoke now reaches Raymond Boulevard.
2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling 8X3R. Come in, please.
This is 8X3R coming back at 2X2L.
How's reception? How's reception? K, please. Where are you, 8X3R? What's the matter? Where are you?
I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, New York City. I'm speaking from the roof of the broadcasting building, New York City. The bells you hear are ringing to warn the people to evacuate the city as the Martians approach. Estimated in the last 2 hours, over 3 million people have moved out to the roads of the north. Hudson River Parkway has been open for traffic. Avoid bridges to Long Island, hopelessly jammed. All communication with the Jersey Shore closed 10 minutes ago. No more defenses. Our army is white. Artillery, Air Force, everything. White. This may be our last broadcast. We'll stay here till the end. There are people holding a service here below us, in the cathedral. Now I look down the harbor. All manner of boats, overloaded with fleeing population, drifting out from docks. Streets are jammed, noise and crowd like New Year's Eve in city. Wait a second. Wait. The enemy is now in sight above the Palisades. 5 great machines. The first one's crossing the river. I can see it from here, waiting the Hudson like a man wading through a brook. I have a bulletin here with me. Martian cylinders have been falling all over the country. One spotted in Buffalo, St. Louis, Chicago. They seem to be timed and spaced. Now the first one reaches the shore. He stands watching, looking over the city. His steel, cowlish head is even with the skyscrapers. They rise like a new line of towers on the city's west side. Oh, they're lifting their metal hands. I can see it now. This is the end. Smoke comes out. Black smoke, drifting over the city. People in the streets see it now. They're all running towards the East River. Thousands of them. Falling like rats. Now the smoke's spreading faster. It's reached Times Square. People are trying to run from it, but it's no use. They're falling like flies. Now the smoke's reached 6th Avenue, 5th Avenue. It's 100 yards away. It's 50 feet.
Two X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling CQ. 2X2L, calling New York. Isn't there anyone online? Isn't there anyone on air? Isn't there anyone?
To a CBS presentation of Orson Welles in the Mercury Theater, on the air in an original dramatization of The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. This broadcast will continue in a few moments. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.
As I set down these notes on paper, I'm obsessed by the thought that I may be the last living man on Earth. I've been hiding in this empty house near Grover's Mill, a small island of daylight cut off by the black smoke from the rest of the world. All that happened before the arrival of these monstrous creatures now seems like it's part of another life. A life that has no continuity with the present. Further dear luck of the lonely words who pencils the words on the back of some astronomical notes bearing the signature of Richard Pearson. I look down at my blackened hands, my torn shoes, my tattered clothes, and I try to connect them with a professor who lives in Princeton, and who on the night of October 30th glimpsed through his telescope an orange splash of light on a distant planet. My wife, my students, my colleagues, my books, my observatory, my world. Where are they? Did they ever exist? Am I Richard Pearson? What day is it? Do days exist without calendars? Does time pass when there are no human hands left to wind the clocks? In writing down my daily life, I tell myself I shall preserve the human history between the dark covers of this little book that was meant to record the movements of the stars, but to write I must live, and to live I must eat. I find moldy bread in the kitchen, and an orange not too spoiled to swallow. I keep watch at the window. From time to time I catch sight of a Martian above the black smoke. The smoke still holds the house in its black coil, but at length there is a hissing sound, and suddenly I see a Martian, mounted on his machine, spraying the air with a jet of steam as if to dissipate the smoke. I watch in the corner as his huge metal legs nearly brush against the house. Exhausted by terror, I fall asleep. It's morning. Morning! Sun streams in the window. The black cloud of gas is lifted, and the scorched meadows to the north look as though a black snowstorm had passed over them. I wander from the house and make my way to a road. No traffic. Here and there, a wrecked car, baggage overturned, blackened skeleton. I push on north. For some reason, I feel safer trailing these monsters than running away from them. And I keep a careful watch, for I have seen the Martians feed. Should one of their machines appear over the top of the trees, I'm ready to fling myself flat on the earth. I come to a chestnut tree. October. Chestnuts are ripe. I fill my pockets. I must keep alive. 2 days I wander in a vague northerly direction through a desolate world. Finally, I notice a living creature, a small red squirrel in a beech tree. I stare at him in wonder. He stares back at me. I believe at that moment the animal and I shared the same emotion, the joy of finding another living being. I wander on north. I find dead cows in a brackish field, and beyond the charred ruins of a dairy, a silo remains standing guard over the wasteland like a lighthouse deserted by the sea. Astride the silo perches a weathercock. The arrow points north. The next day, I come to a city vaguely familiar in its contours, yet its buildings strangely dwarfed and leveled off, as if a giant had swiped off its highest towers with a capricious sweep of his hand. I reach the outskirts. I find New York, undemolished, yet humbled by some whim of the advancing Martians. Presently, with an odd feeling of being watched, I caught sight of something, crouching in a doorway. I made a step towards it. It rose up and became a woman armed with a large knife.
Stop! Where do you come from?
I come from many places. A long time ago, from Princeton.
Princeton, huh? That's near Grover's Mill!
Yes.
Grover's Mill. There's no food here. This is my country. All this end of town, down to the river. There's only food for one. Which way are you going?
I don't know. I guess I'm looking for people.
What was that? Did you hear something just then?
No, only a bird. A live bird?
Yeah, you have to learn that birds have shadows these days. Hey, we're in the open here? Let's crawl in this doorway here and talk.
Have you seen any Martians?
Nah, they've gone over to New York. At night, the sky is alive with their lights, just as if people were still living in it. By daylight, you can't see them. 5 days ago, a couple of them carried something big across the flats from the airport. I think they're learning how to fly.
Fly?
Yeah, fly.
Then it's over with humanity. Stranger, there's still you and I. 2 of us left.
Yeah, they got themselves in solid. They wrecked the greatest country in the world. Those green stars, they're probably falling somewhere every night. They've only lost 1 machine. There isn't anything to do. We're done. We're licked.
Where were you? You're in uniform.
Yeah, what's left of it. I was in the militia. National Guard. That's good. There wasn't any war, any more than there's war between men and ants.
Yes, but we're edible ants. Found that out. What'll they do with us?
I've thought it all out. Right now, we're caught as we're wanted. The Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep on doing that. They'll begin catching us systematic-like, keeping the best and storing us in cages and things. They haven't begun on us yet.
Not begun?
Not begun? All that's happened so far is because we don't have sense enough to keep quiet, bothering them with guns and such stuff, and losing our heads and rushing off into crowds. Now, instead of our rushing around blind, we gotta fix ourselves up. Fix ourselves up according to the way things are done now. Cities, nations, civilization, progress, done.
Yes, but if so, what is there to live for?
Well, there won't be any more concerts for a million years or so. And no nice little dinners at restaurants. If it's the amusement you're after, I guess the game's up.
What is there left?
Life! That's what! I want to live! Yeah, and so do you. We're not going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either. Tamed and fattened and bred like an ox.
What are you gonna do?
I'm going on right under their feet. I got a plan. We are finished. We don't know enough. We gotta learn plenty before we got a chance. And we gotta live and keep free while we learn, see? I thought it all out, see?
Tell me the rest.
Well, it isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts, and that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you. All these little office workers that used to live in these houses, they'd be no good. They don't have any stuff in them. They used to run off to work. I've seen hundreds of them, running to catch their commuter's train in the morning, afraid they'd be canned if they didn't. Running back at night, afraid they won't be home in time for dinner. Lives insured and lives invested in cases of accidents. Yeah, and on Sundays, worried about the hereafter. The Martians will be a godsend for those guys. Nice, roomy cages, good food, careful breeding, no worries. Yeah, and after a week or so chasing about the fields on empty stomachs, they'll come and be glad to be caught.
You've thought it all out, haven't you?
Sure, you bet I have. These Martians, they're gonna make pets of some of them. Train them to do tricks, who knows? Get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed. Yeah, and maybe some, they'll train to hunt us.
No, that's impossible. No human being.
Yes, they will. There's men who do it gladly. One of them ever comes after me, though, why?
In the meantime, you and I and others like us, where are we going to live while the Martians own the Earth?
I've thought it all out. We'll live underground
I've been thinking about the sewers. Under New York, there are miles and miles of them. The main ones are big enough for anybody. And there's cellars, vaults, underground storerooms, railway tunnels, subways. You begin to see, eh? We'll get a bunch of strong fellas together. No weak ones. That rubbish out!
As you meant me to go.
Well, I gave you a chance, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that. Go on.
Well, we gotta make safe spaces for us to stay in, see? Get all the books we can. Science books. That's where men like you come in, see? We'll raid the museums. We'll even spy on the Martians. It may not be so much we have to learn before. Listen, just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their own fighting machines suddenly start off, heat rays right and left, and not a Martian in them. Not a Martian in them, see? But humans who learned the way how. It may even be in our time. Ha ha, gee! Imagine having one of them lovely things with a heat ray wide and free. We'd turn it on Martians. We'd turn it on humans. We'd bring everybody down on their knees.
That's your plan?
Yeah! You, me, and a few more of us? We'd own the world!
I see.
Hey, what's the matter? Where are you going?
Not to your worlds. Goodbye, stranger. Well, after parting with the artillery woman, I came at last to Holland Tunnel. I entered that silent tube, anxious to know the fate of the great city on the other side of the Hudson. Cautiously, I came out of the tunnel and made my way up Canal Street. I reached 14th Street, and there again were black powder and silver bodies, and an evil, ominous smell from the gratings of the cellars of some of the houses. I wandered up the 30s and 40s. I stood alone at Times Square. I caught sight of a lean dog running down 7th Avenue with a piece of dark brown meat in his jaws. He made a wide circle around me as though he feared I might prove a fresh competitor. I walked up Broadway in the direction of the strange powder, past silent shop windows displaying their mute wares to empty sidewalks, past the Capitol Theater, silent, dark, past a shooting gallery where a row of empty guns faced an arrested line of wooden ducks. Near Columbus Circle, I noticed models of 1939 motor cars in the showrooms, facing empty streets. From over the top of the General Motors building, I noticed a flock of black birds circling in the sky. I hurried on. Suddenly, I caught sight of the hood of a Martian machine, standing somewhere in Central Park, gleaming in the late afternoon sun. An insane idea. I rushed recklessly across Columbus Circle and into the park. I climbed a small hill above a pond in 16th Street, and from there I could see, standing silently along the mall, 19 of those great metal titans, their cowls empty, their steel arms hanging listlessly by their sides. I looked in vain for the monsters that inhabited those machines. Suddenly, my eyes were attracted to an immense flock of black birds hovering directly below me. They circled to the ground, and there before my eyes, stark and silent, lay the Martians, with hungry birds pecking and tearing brown shreds of flesh from their dead bodies. Later, when their bodies were examined in the laboratories, it was found that they were killed by putrefactive and diseased bacteria, which their bodies were unprepared. Slain, after all man's defenses had failed, by the humblest thing that God in his wisdom has put upon this earth. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the deepest space, no life existed beyond our petty surface of our minute sphere. Now we see further, dim and wonderful, is the image that I conjured up in my mind of life spreading slowly throughout our little seedbed throughout our solar system, throughout the infinite vastness of sidereal space. But that's a remote dream, to us and not to them. Is the future ordained, perhaps? Strange to sit in my peaceful study at Princeton, writing down this last chapter of the record that begun at an abandoned farm at Grover's Mill. Strange to watch children playing in the streets. Strange to watch young people strolling in the green, where the new grass heals. The black scars of bruised earth. Strange to watch sightseers enter the museums where the disassembled parts of a Martian machine are kept on public view. Strange to recall when I first saw it. Bright and clean cut, hard and silent, under the dawn of the last great day.
This is Orson Welles, ladies and gentlemen, out of character, to assure you that the War of the Worlds has no further significance than as the holiday offering it was meant to be. The Mercury Theater's own version of dressing up in a sheet and jumping out of a bush and yelling boo. Starting now, we couldn't soap all your windows and steal all your garden gates, so we did the next best thing. We annihilated the world before your very ears and utterly destroyed the CBS. You will be relieved, I hope, to learn that we didn't mean it, and that both institutions are still open. So, goodbye, everybody, and remember, please, the terrible lesson you learned tonight. That grinning, glowing, globular invader of your living room is an inhabitant of the pumpkin patch. And if your doorbell rings and nobody's there, well, that was no Martian. It's Halloween.
Tonight, the Columbia Broadcasting System and its affiliated stations coast to coast have brought to you The War of Worlds by H.G. Wells, the 17th in its weekly series of dramatic broadcasts featuring Orson Welles in the BC Theater on the Air. Next month, we present the dramatization of It's a Wonderful Life. This is the Columbia Broadcasting System.